Okay, so as we think about, how do we understand this evidence? It's worth noting that the people that deny the resurrection don't deny the evidence. They just try to explain it in a way that doesn't require a resurrection. So one of the explanations is the hallucination theory. This is the idea that the disciples, they hallucinated. They thought they saw Jesus. They believed they really saw him. Now, why would they have that kind of hallucination? Well, what we're told is it's a bit like when a person loses a loved one. And perhaps they've lived with them for 30 years and then they lose them. And the person that's left behind longs to see them again. And there might be times when they so long for that person, they thought they heard their voice. Or they thought they caught a glimpse of them somewhere. And what some people say is the disciples, in a similar way, hallucinated. They so wanted Jesus to be alive that they hallucinated. So the question is, does that have explanatory scope and does it have explanatory power? Well, firstly, it doesn't have explanatory scope. Now, it does explain why the disciples proclaimed that Jesus was alive. They thought they'd seen him. So it explains that. It's got explanatory scope just for that bit of evidence. But that's not the only bit of evidence it has to explain. For example, it does not explain the empty tomb. So, if the disciples went around proclaiming that Jesus was alive because of a hallucination, the whole Christian faith would have been stopped very quickly, because the Roman authorities or the Jewish authorities would have gone to the tomb and dragged out Jesus' dead corpse and said that the disciples are obviously mistaken. The disciples themselves would have then seen the dead corpse of Jesus and they'd have said, oh, we must have hallucinated. But anyway, it lacks explanatory power as well. You see, they went round proclaiming that Jesus is alive. All the apostles, with the exception of the apostle John, were martyred. They were put to death for what they believed. Some of them were covered in tar and set on fire. Others of them were beheaded. Peter, for example, was crucified upside down. Now, if you're willing to pay such a big price for something that you believe, you've got to be pretty sure about it. Now, anyone who has done drugs will know what it means to hallucinate. Or if you've had a severe fever, maybe you've hallucinated. The thing is, hallucinations do not explain what the disciples claimed. The disciples claimed, for example, on one occasion, all of them were together and they sat down and they ate and they drank and they talked with Jesus. On another occasion, 2 disciples were met with the risen Jesus and they walked miles with him talking along the way. And they explain how Jesus told them all about himself from the scriptures. Jesus basically preached a sermon to them. And then at the end of that, they sat down and they broke bread together. Now, people don't have that kind of hallucination. A hallucination, you might think you saw something and then it's gone again. You don't, a group of you together all share the same hallucination of having a meal with someone. On one occasion, Jesus appeared to over 500 people. How could 500 people have the same hallucination? No. The hallucination theory, if you don't think about all the evidence, then it explains why the disciples may have gone around saying that Jesus is alive. But you can only believe that it explains that if you ignore most of the other evidence. So the hallucination theory is inadequate. It lacks explanatory scope because it doesn't explain the empty tomb, and it lacks explanatory power.